Okay, Mike, for the reveal.
Ta-da!
Congratulations.
It's a LaDawri.
And it survived the hurricanes.
Yes, it
We
did.
parked it under the tree without safekeeping.
What a car.
We are standing in front of a car that has eluded me no longer. And I was watching it. John Gruhl started the LaDawri.com website back in the early 2000s, and I joined John about 2006 or 7 or 8 and so forth, and John is still a good friend. And we were good friends with Gene Simon. Now, Gene Simon helped build, in small and large ways, I think he said did all the fiberglass work originally on this race car that was built by his uncle, and as I remember, his name was David Simon. And David Simon and Gene Simon's car was actually in the second Sports Specials magazine. I think it's 1959 by Motor Trend. And you never saw the body. I'm not sure they said it was going to be a LaDawri, but you saw the chassis. And the chassis was done by, I forgot his first name, but I can't forget his last name, Dangerfield, because I'm a big Rodney Dangerfield fan. And he actually was well known and documented building superb race car chassis in Middle America, Ohio, Maryland, in that area. And this successfully competed. It won several events, but it was a race car only. And it was a race car that the roll hoop is now gone. We'll hopefully put that back. The windshield was out and the whole piece. And some people think that the windshields, these cars look better without the big grab bar.
Or the basket handle, as others have called
Very
it.
few people, I've always liked the basket handle. Looks like an Easter basket. But in this case, we're going to actually try to fit a Corvette windshield 53. And it fits nicely so far, but we're going to try to fit it and see. My hunch is that it's going to look better with a 53, 54, 55 Corvette windshield. That's the windshield glass as well as the frame and all. So it was, what's remarkable about this car is that it again returns me to my youth in that my mentor, Paul Terhorst, who was up in Chicago and helped me for 3 or 4 years learn all about cars. And he was a Packard enthusiast, and we now have the Packard Request, and I've got something called the Packard Monte Carlo. All these I ended up getting in the last few years, not early on. And this is a Packard powered, the only Packard powered race car that we're aware of that at all, or Packard powered race car that did well. It actually is documented doing well in Mid-America. I believe it could go to the vintage races out west, the Monterey Historic. And you can see the Packard engine here. This is not the original Packard engine. That what came out of a Studebaker, which had a Packard engine in the late 50s. It had a dual quad system too, which was nice. So we're going to try to replicate that as well, in theory, or our partners and myself will, or someone new will do. But in this case, most likely us. I love the LaDawri cars. In fact, during Mike's visit this time at Undiscovered Classics, we went through the photo archives, which haven't been seen in 70 years, that were provided by Joan Dawes and the Dawes family a number of years ago. And poor Mike has been sitting there with a scanner. I'm tanning, but he's now like white as a ghost because all he's been in this in the archive scanning. This is his first day out in days. How do you feel, Mike?
I feel like I forgot what the sun looked like. I just know what black and white negatives look like in a dark room.
That's right. Color is something new to him because they're all, well, you found a couple color negatives.
A couple really good color photos, yeah.
So our car is has the same damage that was last shown in the early 1960s when it was raced. It was put away and saved, and it's about the same condition it was put away, saved the engine. I know that Gene Simon, who has joined us the last couple of years in 2023 and 2024, he's out there in the San Francisco area, has given us a lot of information, written up the history of the car. And Mike, we do have all the history written up by Gene, and pictures and build pictures too, color build pictures from back in the day. It's got a wonderful history. It's a wonderful car. Race cars are always easier to restore because there's less work. No cigarette lighters and radios and air conditioning and so forth. But it's less work, particularly if you're not going to race it. And do I look like a racer? I look like ballast. So no, I'm not a racer. This would be fun to just drive and bring to a show. And the same thing with one of our race cars hidden over there, which is a Renault, or Renault as people call it now. I didn't get the memo back in the 70s or 80s or 90s, but it's a Renault race car. Who was it on? Dale Halliday Special. So that's another one. Evidently, we're getting into race cars. I think I've got a third one. It's based on the LaDawri Firestar, but that seems to be said. There could have been a fourth one. I had one a long time ago, the Bear Cage, which is still in our collection, but no longer owned by me. And that turned out to be the very first Cheetah. So evidently, we're into race cars as well as all of these other cars. So
There's not much we don't like.
nope. So this is a cool car, LaDawri. I'm hoping we're bringing this back on the road. We picked up, did I pick another? I may be picking up another LaDawri Conquest with John Gruhl, taking over his collection from him, or his car. And oh, what else? I think there's another one. Is there another LaDawri? You've got one. You've got the General Electric hybrid
two.
electric. You have two?
We got two. I've
Oh,
got
you got the Sebring, the small one.
No, actually, I guess I have three LaDawris. Well, four, depending on how you count. I've got
Four.
the General Electric
Right.
Conquest, the blue and gold Conquest.
Oh, the blue. That's a gorgeous one. How did you get that from me?
I think I arm wrestled you for
Oh
it.
my God.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I don't
all
think
the
you
Lumineers
tried
are-
very hard, though. I think.
Are you going to sell that or are you going to keep that?
No, that's the one I want to build.
That's the cool one.
And then I've got the Daytona or Sebring body, which was never built.
Sebring body, smaller one.
Technically, my Victress C2 is actually a LaDawri Sicilian.
Yeah,
It was
but the
after,
Victress cars, I always considered a Victress.
Yeah.
Victress sold their bodies, the C2 Coupe. It's back here, C2 small and C3 Coupe, Victress S1. They call them all new names. They did a great job promoting the cars and expanding their company. But I always consider those Victresses made by LaDawri, even though they have their own name. But this, to me, a LaDawri is a LaDawri Conquest, a LaDawri Daytona, a Sebring, a Delmar, a Quest QT. QT Quest, QT. And I asked Joan, why is it called the Q, letter QT? And she goes, well, just say it faster. Okay, QT Quest. I understand.
it's a small Conquest
was
that's
the
very cute.
Was the foreman or manager of the whole facility. She's been a tremendous help over the last 20 years with history, and she's joined us at least two shows. I think a third one as well out west. And they do retain a car in their collection that's LaDawri. Actually was in the same book, Sportscar Specials book. Dr. Kerwin, I believe. LaDawri Kerwin. Forgot the first name. Right now you're looking at the SCCA race sticker of some sort years ago. I hope we do this car. This has got a lot of history to it, and I'd love to see it around and running with Gene still joining us and maybe even behind the wheel. Gene Simon, that is. So just another LaDawri Conquest, another car worth saving, another car with fantastic history and styling, and something that we particularly love, and we love it even more when other people adopt the things that we like.
So give us the LaDawri history lesson.
Well, LaDawri history, which we had Joan's best told by Joan. Maybe we need to do a phone call with her to tell the history. Joan married Les Dawes in the early to mid 50s, I think the early 50s. And right out of high school, Les always, he had already traced the design of the cars. I mean, how many young guys, at least in an older generation, were drawing cars? There were talented artists across the world at a very young age, and he was one of them. The LaDawri Conquest was something he penned while he was like 17 or 18. And I don't think of the exact year, but 1956, they were up, and we've just uncovered all the photos thanks to Joan Dawes and lending us the photos and negatives and all from her family, about the first one being designed and built. It's got some strange bumpers on it, from what I could tell, but bumpers on fiberglass cars of the 50s were not an unusual thing. They really, most of the 50s specials dealt in fiberglass, bumpers ruin the look and the image, but they're required for street worthiness, and in many cases they put them on, and very few look good. Only a few look really nice, and generally I try to get them off of cars. LaDawri Conquest is a beautiful car without the bumpers. So in this case, 1956, he finished the car in 1956. All the stuff in the world was happening, of course, in Los Angeles, but he was out there from Burnaby or Vancouver area, Canada. And strangely enough, that was a whole pocket. We found several different people right there in Vancouver area, and we've owned a couple of cars that were done by separate companies. I know of three. And we've owned, it's called a Panther, but a Python. The Python mic that you had seen that I had,
Yes.
now owned by Bobby Green. But that was done in that same Vancouver area. There's a third one, can't remember the name, but I was dealing with her and her father. He built two of them. We got all the pictures in the story. So people were building out of fiberglass, and in fact, this car was named in 1956 the Cavalier, introducing the Cavalier, and I think we called it LaDawri Coachcraft bodies by LaDawri Coachcraft. So in 1956, they were celebrating. It went to the PNE, Pacific National Exhibition, which is an enormous Canadian exhibition, like a World's Fair that they've done each year. And we've got pictures of it at the fair. We've got pictures of it where he was trying to sell Actually, the ones we looked at recently were from Long Beach, so we got some up in Vancouver, Burnaby area. And they did a great job. We got pictures of it up in Canada in parades. But he wasn't there for long. That's where they're born and raised, that whole area of Canada, and where the car was birthed. So what he did, and with his wife and at least one child, I can't remember if it was one or two, is they packed up the newly finished LaDawri Cavalier and drove all the way down to start a new life and build a company down in Los Angeles, California, Long Beach to be specific. So it's 1956, and just the ride down there, I hope I recorded the conversation from Joan coming down there. I mean, these cars are all hand built, and you're always sorting them out. I mean, they're not like production cars from almost any era are sorted out by the time they get to the dealer. These are built, and you have to sort them out and drive them. We still have that problem because most of our cars just go to the museum, so they don't get sorted out fully. We sort them out in between museum or show stays. So I think what she told me is they're driving along, and she's got, he's driving, she's in the passenger seat, and they have their child, at least one child, it could have been two at the time, driving in. The hardtop flies off because he had the hardtop. Okay, they go get the hardtop, strap it back down. Then he continues driving, and the steering wheel comes off. I don't know. I said, well, how did he get off the side of the road? I guess he probably put it back on. What do they call that phrase?
Jesus take the wheel.
I'm sorry?
Jesus take the wheel.
Well, that, but something like the car is only as strong as its weakest link or something behind the nut behind the wheel. And it probably was the nut that came off and got loose, but people, it's a reference to whoever's driving the crazy person. And so they got down to Long Beach. And so what, this is kind of at the height, I call it the golden era. Sounds too sedate. But the cars and your own designs and such really were from the 1951 fiberglass, earlier for sport customs, through about 1960. And then in 1964, there still was like the Shark and the Canera and the CRV and such, but they're far fewer, probably less than 10 from 1960 to 70 I'm aware of. Whereas everything before 1960, anything hand-built by companies, they're all original design. Kellison's, glass bars. Not Devon. Devon was based on a design, what is that
Ermini.
called? Ermini design. And the Allied was based on the Cisitalia 202 coupe. And the Vale was another 202, but it was the new LaDawri Spider. So there were two or three that were based on copies, but very few. And they never mentioned that back in the day either, which I always thought was kind of funny. So he moves in 1956, late 56. And by 1957, newly named from the Cavalier to the LaDawri Conquest, it's on the cover of Road and Track, which I thought was amazing. Can you imagine living in that era and having success, just a family, small family, and designing something that's so attractive? And of course, it has 1956 Corvette lines, so it was influenced probably by what he saw there too. But can you imagine being the excitement you would have if you're like 20, 21, and your car's on the cover of a magazine? So I thought that was really cool. We got some big posters we've blown up, and that story is one of the reasons I really enjoyed the LaDawri Conquest. The other thing, years later, we've had the magazines. We became friends with people like Robert Cumberford, Stan Mott, Wayne Cady, all sorts of folks, which are really honored to be friends with. People who were there in the 50s, young men. And Stan and I were talking one time. He was down for about a week. He lived over in Europe. I don't know how close, I don't think close to Robert Cumberford, but he was there in Europe. And he was over here for a week, somewhere about 2010, 12. And I was showing him the LaDawri Conquest. He goes, well, I put it on the cover. He said, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, take a look who the art director is. It was Stan Mott. Now, Stan Mott's famous for doing the Cyclops and other kinds of fantastic artwork. If you're from that era, you generally know his work or know him and his work, one of the two. And so there it is. Stan Mott was the art director for just a few months at the Road and Track for John Bond, and John Bond and him put it on the cover, and he authorized all the pictures, and he talked about that, and I had Stan sign some LaDawri covers on Road and Track and so forth. So how can you not love a car with such history? We all know the histories of the fantastic cars, the Ferraris and the Corvettes, and we can recite them, if you're an enthusiast, by memory. And they're wonderful stories. But I love the stories of the handle, the champion, the individual, the one against the machine. and not in defiance, just what can I do? I'm going to design and build a car. I mean, people have a hard time vacuuming their house. Designing and building a car is many, 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 many leaps above vacuuming a house. And so I'm just inspired by those people, impressed by those people, and want to celebrate those people. And that's what Undiscovered Classics is all about.